Crazy guitar secret the pros don't want you to know. Nobody's actually good at guitar. They've just been tricking you the entire time. So as someone who's been tricking people for a long time, I'm going to show you some secrets that you can just take two chords, E minor and G major, and then just play them in all sorts of different ways that actually kind of familiarizes yourself with the neck and makes people think that you're really good. Okay, so these are probably the two easiest chords that anybody can start out with. So any beginner, intermediate player can learn from this. Traditional E minor, open, 2-2, open. G major, my G major of choice, 3-2, open, 3, and then don't play the high E string. But there's an even easier way to do this, right? E minor, you could just play the bottom 3 strings. G major, you could just play the D, G, and B strings. Same difference, right? So any way we can combine a G, a B, and a D is a G major. There are many ways to do this all over the neck. Any way you combine an E, a G, and a B. E minor, many ways to do this all over the neck. All right, so today's video is sponsored by Bog Street Pics. This is probably the pick that I've been waiting for my entire life, okay? So I have an affiliate code in the description with a discount on these. Try them out, because the cool thing about this is I generally like thinner picks, right? I think they just sound better strumming. But they break. So the nice thing about this pick is it has 2 different thicknesses, and depending on which corner you use, it's going to sound a lot different. So I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I want to talk about different E minor things that you could do right away, okay? So the main exercise for this entire lesson is going to sound like this. Okay, so this may sound simple to you, it may sound difficult to you, but the nice thing is we're going to anchor your ring finger on the D string the entire time. So if you watch how I do this, I'm not going to move my ring finger to a different string, I'm just going to be sliding it back and forth. So you may have tried playing like an E minor like this, right here, like a bar chord A string rooted version of an E minor. 7, A, 9, D, 9, G, 8, B, and then you can bar the high E string or leave it open, okay? Now if you bar it, it's a movable shape, which is great, you know? E minor, E flat minor, D minor, D flat minor, C minor, so on and so forth. But the beauty of E minor, and why so many songs are in the key of E minor or the key of G major, is because it's just the guitar in the standard tuning is set up perfectly to do cool things like this, all right? So all I've got here is my ring finger on the 9th fret of the D string and my middle finger on the 8th fret of the B string, okay? Sounds great on this Martin D35. And again, one of the beautiful things about acoustic guitar is when you use open strings to kind of glue chord progressions together, I think it just sounds so good, right? So the nice thing about this is I'm thinking of the 9th fret as my root note, essentially, right? Even though it's a B, so this note isn't the root note of the chord, because I'm getting an open E string, and just the way that we're combining the notes E, G, and B, this is an E minor. But I'm thinking of a touch point for the guitar fret just being the 9th fret on the D string, right? Usually that's indicated by an inlay, depending on what kind of guitar you're using. But it's a pretty easy shape to get into. And now I'm leading with my ring finger because I want to go from here back to here. So I'm going to go 2 steps or 4 frets back. And the cool thing is I can just jump inlays to get to the 5th fret. And then really, if you look at how my hand is positioned here versus here, it's very similar. But it is making a different chord, okay? So now I've got a G major, staircase style, 5D, 4G, 3B, right? But the hand shape isn't so much different. In fact, I can actually inflect this first E minor by adding my pointer finger to the high E string, grabbing that B, or having it open, being an E. When we're building chords, it doesn't matter how many of each note that you have. It matters as far as like how the chord kind of sounds, but as far as the name of the chord, it doesn't matter at all. There's really no distinction between this E minor and this E minor, as long as I'm not getting the open A string. Or this E minor, or this E minor. They're just different voicings of the same chord. So when you can kind of do cool fluid stuff, I think it just adds to the creativity and the sound of the playing that is a cool variation of E minor to G. Now it sounds like I'm playing more of a song, I'm going on more of an acoustic journey, and I think it just kind of sounds better, right? So we've got that there, my pointer finger is just kind of, sometimes it's grabbing that B on the high E string, sometimes it's opening up. You can even pull off. And I think it sounds great because I'm using the thin side of this pick. If I wanted maybe something more of like a lead type thing, hopefully you can see this in here, but like you can see where there's a ridge there and it separates the thick part of the pick from the thin part of the pick. So all I have to do is just rotate it, and now I've got something that's more, you know, conducive to playing maybe like lead parts. Again, if I were to do that same thing with the thin part of the pick, you know, I can still do it, but the give is so much greater. That's why I like having the give of a thin pick for when I'm doing it. And even the muted sound of it is different from a... It's a little harder, and especially on an acoustic guitar, I feel like sometimes, depending on how I'm playing it, it's driving the top more in a way that I don't necessarily like. That's why I kind of like strumming with a thin pick, playing lines with a thick pick, and this really solves both problems. So thank you to Bog Street for sponsoring the video. Like I said, there's a special discount link in the description if you want to check these out. You might as well, right? Check them out. New pick. It's cool. The nice thing about this too is it has a grip, so it's easy to hold on to, and right where you would hold on to it is where the grip is with the thicker part, so it's not as flimsy as a thick pick, but you get the cool, as flimsy as a thin pick, but you get the cool benefit of having the thinness right there. So, we've got this. And again, you see my ring finger never leaves the fretboard. It goes right to here. So, E minor, G major, E minor, G major. I can go to this E minor just as easily by still tracking my ring finger along the D string to the second fret, and then now my middle finger just kind of jumps to the A string. Okay? So, really cool way just to go from here. And then maybe into your original position of G major. Or if you want to do it like this, maybe I think that's kind of an easier way to do it because your middle finger is already on the B on the A string. You can just take your ring finger and pop it down to the E string and get the lower part of that G. So that is, I think, a pretty interesting demonstration of just doing like, hey, E minor to G. Something really simple, you see it in a bunch of chords, but now, or a bunch of songs, but now you can use these chords in different ways to get creative. Or keep that same finger and then that sets you up to maybe go to a different chord, which we're going to go to next, okay? My favorite chord in any key is the 4 chord as a major 7 chord. So in the key of G, G, A, B, C, G major to C major. You'll see that in a lot of songs. We can just take this G major chord and then go like this to make C major 7. Okay, so again, you can kind of see that the hand movements aren't crazy different. Okay, one of the issues that I have with how we teach beginner guitar a lot is we'll go through these chord voicings that are like so different, right? Like C major looks like this, and then G major, you reshuffle all your fingers to get to here, And then A minor, you reshuffle them again. And then D major, you reshuffle them again. And then the bar chords come in, and it's a totally different hand shape. The nice thing about this kind of method of playing, if you look at my hand, the way that it's kind of stacked, the way the fingers are stacked, they're really in line all the way to here. Then maybe one variation, and then we're going through all the chords in a way that the hand shape is really just maybe moving one finger at a time, which I think everybody should kind of start out doing that instead, because also you'll get an understanding for how these chords relate to each other in context. So, like I said before, we're going to go from this G major, drop your pinky to the 3rd fret of the A string, move your middle finger down a string. So I've got 3, 3, 2, and then open on the top. Which, like we said before, the top string's open is just an E minor. So now we have a C major 7. And the cool thing about this shape in particular is we can move this 2 frets higher for a D major chord-ish, and then move this all the way to the 10th fret for another G major chord-ish. Again, this would technically have another name like a G major 6, or something like that. But it's mostly a G major, right? C, D, G, as compared to C, G, D. Again, both are great. No one way is better than the other, but the cool thing about this is a different option, a different flavor, because you want options. That's why you want a Bog Street pick. See, that's driving it a little more on the top, right? See? Cool thing about that is let's do one more E minor chord voicing, which, again, where I got these, 1, 2. Let's grab another one that lines up with the chords we just played, okay? So, my favorite E minor chord voicing is probably open E, 7 on the A string, because it's another E, and then like this, right? So open E, 7A, 5D, open the rest of the way down. The cool thing about that is when you strike the open E string, you can get a cool back and forth motion going. Now, the other way you could do this as voicing is put your ring finger down on the 7th fret, and now we have an extra B. This is the same chord, but we just have an extra B in this chord instead of an extra E in this chord. The reason you might want to do this is because then you can keep it in line with the other chords that we learned, and then just move to the 7th fret, and instead of having it 1 fret off, we just have it 2 frets back, right? And that's the difference between a major and minor chord. Instead of a major 3rd is what it's called, we have a flat 3rd. Check out the Patreon for more about that. So there's E minor, C, D, G, E minor, E minor, G, E minor, G, E minor, it always sounds good when you go to the 4 chord. Oh my god. And again, it sounds great when you're strumming it with the Bog Street pick. Really like these picks. Again, the grip, I've got no notes here. You can go thin, thick, has a grip, dual zone, whatever. Really cool innovation. So, like I said, show the guys at Bog Street some love. If you have any questions or comments, hit the comment section, the website, or on Instagram, or whatever. And I would love to do some more lessons. So let me know what kind of other lessons you want, if this is helpful, or if I can do anything else. And I will talk to you guys later.